So today we're going to talk, we'll be mostly talking, so not much hands-on on this one. I will try to do some live moving around of things in the second part. Well, to be frank, this one is a hot topic because, well, first, one thing is that clearly at Easy, well, we don't do projects, so it's a bit hard for us. We don't have the experience we have. We've all kind of been either consultants or developers, but it's kind of been a while. And well, since we've started with Publish 5, we kind of don't do that. But well, I have ideas and sometimes conflicting ideas about how those projects should be configured and organized. So I will mostly expose my findings from the last year and last week about how this should be done. So the topics will mostly be what should go where, which configuration should be placed where, and how you can version an EasyPublish project and make it live. So I hope it will be valuable for you. So first thing, what is a site? So what we've seen yesterday in our workshop about the beer site, the base for a site, I should have that below. Of course, in the wrong order. I'm just looking for my thing. Ignore that, please. Okay, I've lost part of it. So well, I'll just improvise a bit. So the site, the base for a site we've seen yesterday, as far as we're concerned, it's your main bundle, namely a site bundle sitting in the SRC folder. I think we can all agree on that. We could think of edge cases where a site would sit in the vendor folder. It is a case for the demo site. I would say it's wrong. It should not be in the vendor folder. It should be kind of a project, a special version of EasyPublish where you have a demo site installed. It should be in source, as far as I see it. So the base is this site bundle. We also that would have mostly your configuration, your templates, so your views, your Twig templates, and your custom controllers. That's the base. Second part, because we have legacy, is, as Jérôme very well demonstrated yesterday, the legacy site bundle. To be frank, is much more skilled in this area than I am, so I won't elaborate that much on this part, because I will make mistakes anyway. So we have the site bundle and legacy site bundle. One part we can't do without is composer.json, because, well, your site has dependencies. So those dependencies will go into composer.json, even though we, as a software vendor, provide one. That's one of my main issues with what we do. We don't just ship EasyPublish bundles. Currently, maybe we can improve it later, but currently EasyPublish is a Symfony application. But it's not an application you can use out of the box. I mean, just EasyPublish itself, unless your customer wants a demo bundle, well, you kind of have to change everything. Meaning you will have to change what we provide. And I think that ideally, what you do and what you customize should be as different as possible, well, as separated as possible from what we provide. First reason is avoiding conflicts when updating. For instance, we have this config.yml, and it's quite likely that you may modify it. If you do so, you will enter conflicts. So we'll see about that part when talking about versioning. There are ways around that to make it a bit safer, make it easier, and make it actually possible to upgrade. Another big culprit is the kernel. Because, well, unless you don't have any custom bundles, in which case you don't have a site, you will have to modify the kernel. And you will have conflicts because we will also modify the kernel. There are also workarounds for that, but they also have consequences. So we'll see how we can work around that. But in this area, it's more of an experiment that I did than anything else. So a site is usually the site bundle with its elements, the composer.json, and the dependencies you use. For instance, any third-party Symfony bundle that you require, like this Pager Fanta we use, or any other bundle directly serving your business needs. So, about versioning. I'll show it a bit in details in the code. As far as I see it, but again, I don't have the experience you have and the difficulties you have, I think that when you want to version an EasyPublish 5 project, you should version the root. So we have these meetup projects, either EasyPublish platform or EasyPublish community. So as I did it on a small project, this is what you should version and start from. There are ways with Git to make it quite easy. One thing I do is set as the original upstream the either community or platform. I'm not sure we can do it for platform. There is a copyright in that. Because this one is a very small project. So ideally, if you have a version project, you can pull your project. You get composer.js in the easy publish folder, no vendor because it's not installed. The source folder with your site bundle and any bundle that is only local to the project, and then you just run composer install. And then we have a window of opportunity for some customization. I'll go to that a bit later. So first, I would like to know, did any of you experience difficulties when versioning an easy publish project? What is your experience in this? I'm sure at least one of you can say something. So you don't use versioning? You should. Jérôme, maybe, your experience?
Well, the experience I have with Metal France is that, I usually tend to version almost, all my settings and stuff in the site bundle. But the only drawback I can find is to for the main kernel class, which is because when you do upgrades from version to version, even from community version to community version, you might have conflicts applying diffs and stuff like that. And I'm not talking about the composer.json, but
well, there is simply currently almost nothing we can do about this one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But the only thing would actually be, you should maybe be careful about where you add your own elements. Because when we change composer.json, when we mostly change the require block, we add stuff at the end. So in my opinion, the main issue is one comma, the last comma at the end of the list. Because if you add something, you will add a comma. And we will also add one when adding something. And boom, you get a conflict at this point. So in my experience, if you add your own requirements at the top, you should avoid most of the conflict and the merge should be automatic. So it's a very small thing, but any avoided conflicts is a better conflict. So that's one, I think it's valuable.
yes.
So I will show you what I did. I did an experiment last week. I kind of changed the structure for the demo bundle itself. I moved it to the way I think it should be, like a site you can check out, composer install and get running. So if you want to look at my experiments, then it should be working.
Let's hope so.
Yes. So this is, as I see it, a version easy publish project. So we have pretty much exactly what is provided by us. So we have the bin folder, doc folder, easy publish with some settings, the SRC folder, and a slightly modified, I'm not even sure composer.json is modified because it's demo bundle and we already have the dependencies for it in there. And that's actually wrong, because we shouldn't have in easy publish itself dependencies for our demo site. They should be part of the demo site. But we also have the kernel there, so it's all about what is configured where. But the main point is still that in SRC we have this. And this is how I think a project should look like. It looks like nobody disagrees. I'm very surprised. Let's say it's normal or we all have a hangover. I know I do. So, about versioning. So this project, I tested it the other day. You just clone it or create project, it works as well. Run composer install, add your settings, and it kind of works. So it, of course, keeps the wizard, but the wizard we have at the moment, we should just ignore, because it's a legacy wizard. It's based on those packages we don't want to hear about anymore. So we will work on it, as said by André, for 6.0, I think, the wizard. We kind of have to. But currently, this kind of doesn't take the wizard into account, and I don't think your day-to-day workflow depends on the wizard anyway. Maybe it could in the future, depending on what we do. So that's kind of the big picture about version. Where are the slides? Okay. Second part. That's one part I worked a lot on, thought a lot about. configuring the sites. What we did when we did this big site workshop yesterday is what we always do, modify files in the easypublish/config folder. And potentially, even if we didn't have to, add stuff to the easypublish kernel. That's, let's say, the initial approach to it. But it has the defects I mentioned earlier, potential conflicts, it's painful when upgrading. I mean, in the upgrade doc, we say, okay, if you have this setting, you need to change it to with this value, and it can be like 5, 6 dozen of them. And that's tedious. It should not be like this. So ideally, you should not have to modify those files, even though easypublish.yaml is not by default version by us. But that's one thing we mentioned yesterday. This is what you should have in your site bundle. You should have custom configuration files. So what we have is here the site extension, the file sitting in the dependency injection folder of your project, of your bundle, that extends the Symfony extension, basically. Symfony dependency container extension, right?
Yes, and this class is automatically generated by the bundle generator. So
it's been brilliantly documented by Jérôme on doc.easy.no. In a nutshell, all you need to do is implement an extra interface. It's a prepend extension interface you have here on the right. That expects one method, which is prepend, and prepend will prepend configuration before loading everything else. So it will add configuration up front, and the big advantage of that is that you can override what is defined here. So here I have a myfile.yaml, so random thing, but as I see it, and maybe you can confirm it, I think we should maybe establish a few conventions about which settings you would have in a site bundle. As I see it, we could expect at least 2. One should be your image aliases, maybe image variations.yaml, and have easypublish automatically load it if it exists. And a second one could, of course, be template rules.yaml, because we saw yesterday that if there is one thing you write, it's template overwrites. So those 2 files would be in resources config, and would just be loaded, prepend it to configuration, and it would just work. The idea is that when you enable the bundle, every configuration it needs is automatically enabled. You shouldn't have to drop files in the easypublish folder, or import stuff, or modify existing files. With this, you don't have to.
And this is particularly useful when you implement bundles, not necessarily site bundles, but also bundles that extend easypublish using easypublish extension points. Like, for instance, let's say the tags bundle from NetGen, which is very nice. From here, you can just add the content fields template that we saw yesterday, like for, you're adding a custom field type, for instance, and then you need the default view block. Usually you're using the semantic configuration in easypublish YAML, but with this prepend extension interface, you just define everything in your bundle, which is distributed for everyone, and settings are automatically loaded, so you don't have to care about it. You may just override it for your project if you need.
So you should have something more readable here. This is what I modified in the demo bundle to automatically load the settings. So we had already this demo.yaml that pretty much had everything, right?
Yeah.
I changed it a bit. We have doctrine.yaml, for instance. So when you prepend something,
you have a laser on.
That's nice. So when you prepend a file, for instance, doctrine.yaml here, you need to say which extension it will extend. So in this case, we will add settings for doctrine. Meaning that in your file, usually you start with doctrine, then your settings. This time you only have the settings, since doctrine is already in this line. So I do it for easy demo YAML, doctrine YAML, easy page YAML, easy commands YAML. And I think that avoiding 1,200 lines of configuration files and dividing it semantically, well, it's easier. You know that if you're looking for doctrine settings, you go to doctrine YAML.
But technically, you could just add only one configuration file, of course, but as Bertrand just said, for semantical settings, I mean, here, you know that in easypage.yaml, you will have all the easypage rules, same for doctrine and so on. There is something, a line on each block that's interesting, not mandatory, but interesting. It's the fourth one, like line 61, container add resource. This one actually prevents you to clear all the cache each time you're loading this YAML file when you're in dev mode. If you don't do that and do a modification in easypage.yaml, you will have to manually clear the cache. So
my naive interpretation is that it basically tells Symfony, you should watch this file and clear the container if it's updated. It is done by default for the files in config, but yeah, we had a mention in the doc saying that if you modify the file, you have to clear the cache, but we...
I updated it.
Okay, good. So we had it like 5 days ago. So that's one thing about configuration. As I see it, the configuration for a site should be with the site. So in the resources config folder of the site, it should be self-contained. You shouldn't have configuration in the app folder or its publish folder and bundle and nothing in the bundle. It should go there. Self-sufficient bundles. That's, I think, one of the main points. So that's one thing. And very important, unlike what happens when you just import settings from a YAML file, you can override those settings by adding new ones in your local configuration in the easy publish folder. Meaning that, okay, you have the default ones, but you can still enrich it. For instance, let's say, add new site accesses or change the site access match method or add languages. Meaning that you have site in one state, but the instance can be slightly different.
Yeah, one use case would be, for your site bundle, you put all your development environment stuff in there. I mean, the match method and stuff. And for when you go to prod, of course you will be using the prod environment, but technically the hoster or your sysadmin can modify this default configuration to fit the hosting.
I will elaborate on that.
Okay, sorry, spoilers.
So, see, instance configuration. So I kind of distinguished the site itself, the site you clone and install, from what you configure, because you can have the instance used by a developer, you can have a production instance, you can have different production instances. And well, for instance, things like ImageMagick configuration, maybe you don't have ImageMagick on one of them, and you have it on the other. So this should be configured in this publish/config folder, because you never know what to expect, and you shouldn't expect anything. But one thing we even don't do enough is use this parameters.yaml.dist file. We have a default one in this publish config. It contains like 3 lines, default locale, page layout.
Yeah, and even the page layout is outdated actually.
But you should use that. Because what you expect when installing, the system should ask you what the configuration is. For instance, if you have this in a parameters.yaml, and I think we do now, or...
No,
we do
by
in the Summer Beer website.
Yes.
So if you have this in a parameters.yaml.dist, one running composer install or composer run script plus install command, if your parameters.yaml, the real one, doesn't contain those settings, it will ask you what the value is. It will show you the values you have in the dist file by default. They are suitable for me, but I hope you have password for MySQL in production, for instance. So you will have to fill them up once, and then they will be written. So anytime you install the site, you will be able to configure it. And I think it kind of makes sense. So what you can do, this is all managed by the incentive parameters of configuration thing, can customize where this file is. So by default, it's in composer.json. If you look at the composer.json for easypublish, you will see that it references easypublish/config/parameters.yaml.dist. And it says that it will write easypublish/config/parameters.yaml. You can customize it, use a different dist file. It's also... Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. A very, very common use cases for this file would be like location IDs, for instance, that tend to vary from your dev environment to staging and production. Yeah, because this is very common in production. Maybe an editor can move some content and stuff like that, so the location IDs would vary. But thanks to this file, it makes it very easy to change the values.
So what I did for this EasyDemo site is I just copied parameters.yaml.list inside my demo site bundle in SRC, and I just told incentive thing that it needs to read this file instead. I copied the original one because we kind of expect the parameters that are there, so if you skip them, you will quickly see that it won't work. But then I added files, added configuration values in there, so that you don't have to look in the site bundle to configure it. Because maybe the person who's installing it doesn't have to know everything about the website. It needs to configure the database access, maybe a few options. So what I have here is a few more settings. So I have the database settings I showed you earlier. So everything you need to configure. Those are the original ones. Secret, local fallback, and default view layout. And I added a few more, like cache drivers. This means that by default, it will just configure. Well, what I first did is change the default configuration so that the list of cache drivers is read from parameters. So somewhere I have %cache drivers %, and it will replace the setting with this one. But if you want to use something else, like maybe you want to add memcached or Redis or whatever, you can have several, and it will use this value instead. So you don't have to go to the file to modify it. And then if you need to configure one of the drivers, like memcached, you kind of need to give the host IP and so on. You can do that in your local configuration in EasyPublish config. You still don't have to touch the site configuration itself. It's the same for cache in memory. By default, it will say, okay, I suggest true for the default value for cache in memory, but if you want to disable it, well, just enter false instead. And it will be automatically read, and again, you won't have to touch the version file inside SRC namespace site bundle. So this is done somewhere, I don't remember where. So that's my config folder for the project. So for Doctrine, for instance, remember the file is prepended in the extension. These are the values I have. So technically, you should never have, nobody from outside the site should have to look into it. It will read the files, the values from parameters.yaml, and it is written when installing. If you want to change them, just edit parameters.yaml, but it's at instance level. And I think it's quite important. So that's database, and then I should have something for the rest of the configuration. Could be in EasyDemo.yaml. Where is the cache configured again, Joe?
In the demo bundle? It's EasyPublish config.
Yeah, I did it here.
Probably in EasyPublish YAML, unless you moved it.
So I very dirtily changed it. Did I move it?
EasyPublish YAML, not config YAML.
Yeah.
Here it is.
So see, here. Since it is something you kind of want to configure, I mean, configure how you cache, really depends on what you're hosting. If you're a developer, you most likely don't want to use a big architecture for caching. But if you're in production, it's more important. Then the system administrator can focus on what he does, which is configuring those aspects, without having to look at template override rules, image settings, and everything. He doesn't care about that. So I think this is quite valuable in terms of deployment and maintenance of a website. And if other configuration are needed, they can just go in this file, but at least you only have what you need. So this kind of demonstrates what I think an EasyPublish YAML should be. You just configure what you need to configure. Even this could technically be removed, because it's the default value, I think. But if you need to configure mapping with hosts, it will go in there, because it purely depends on the server, on which domain name is used and so on. So I strongly encourage you to rely on this parameters.yaml.list, create your own, and put it in EasyPublish itself. So that's one. About the kernel, as I said, we have this is published kernel, and I think it is kind of the main issue we have because we ship a Symfony application, and you will maintain your own is published application that will be on top of our own. So that's a bit of an issue. There is one thing you could do. You can write your own kernel that extends the easy published kernel. This works. So even if we add or remove something or whatever, you won't have a conflict because your own bundles are registered inside your own kernel. And it has one big defect. Since this kernel is instantiated inside index.php and is published console, it won't be loaded. So that's kind of an issue. I found a solution for this, but it's a bit, it's very experimental, and I never really managed to fully convince my colleagues that it can be used. I guess I could show it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe somebody will have an idea. So, but anyway, it's time for showing stuff. I'm not sure how much I actually have to show here.
Yeah, and we have, I don't know. Yeah, we have a bit of time.
A bit? So what I use, and maybe you will have comments about it, that's my development instance, the one I use on a daily basis. And I'll go. So as you can see, I don't work on master. I have my own fork that has like 2 commits in addition to the normal one, I think. A few more, but those are mainly merges. But what I do instead, I don't use the easy publish folder. I use an app folder. So what I did is, I guess it's recompiling the container. What I did is overwrite the normal easy publish folder. I just leave it as it is so that I never get any conflicts, and have my own folder so that I can put anything I want in there and never be affected by what happens. So is it something you think you could use or would use in your projects, being able to have your own app folder? But, yeah. John, were you going to say something?
I saw a yes.
One yes, that's good.
Who would find it useful among you? Yeah? Okay.
Because I think semantically, what are you doing? Semantically, it kind of works because you have this app, but you inherit from this app. So you need the settings we add because we use bundles of our own configured in config.yml, and you need the configuration or it won't work. But you also need your own. So this kind of works well for me. Usually, it seems that it won't this time, I don't know why.
Okay, hanging. Oh!
Nice. Oh yeah. True. Yeah, it's when I was quickly showing up the
query builder.
The query builder, and I kind of forgot to not do typos. Let me just quickly fix this.
You have the line 54.
54. Yeah.
There you go.
So that's my app console. I can register anything I want, and I'm not touching the easy publish kernel. But actually, I'm lying a bit because it's not that simple. The kernel is kind of a very, very central piece of Symfony. For instance, your config folder is located based on the kernel. In the kernel itself, it uses __dir ___ as a starting point. So if you have your kernel in a different place, well, it kind of doesn't know about the easy publish kernel, and you lose all the config, you lose our own easy publish kernel that actually does quite a few things. And that's a bit annoying. So the main issue here is this kernel root dir variable, which we have all over the place in the configuration. We use it for quite a few things. And we can't move everything around. So what had to be done here, because I use my app kernel very simply, that's the kernel from my own instance. So I just load my own bundles. I have a few like sandbox bundle stuff and testing, my query builder, and I do exactly what I showed you earlier. And that's all there is in it. And the fact is that whenever you go for something a bit more advanced, you will have to add more stuff there. There are several methods in the kernel that you can override to customize stuff and so on. And it kind of didn't work with by just extending the native EasyPublish kernel, because then Symfony would be looking for EasyPublish configuration in the app folder, and it's not there. So what had to be done here is add a custom kernel, an EasyPublish extensible kernel. It's updating, so I'll go there manually. Yes. So what had to be done here is first define a special variable, which is easy kernel with you. Because, well, we have two kernels, whether we like it or not. We have the EasyPublish kernel and we have your kernel. So based on this, and by just modifying the files that contain this, I can keep the EasyPublish configuration exactly like it is on our project, and have my own kernel, that's just the app folder, where my own configuration is. So if you look at app, it has pretty much everything. It has app kernel, it has console, and that's necessary because of what I said earlier. You need to load your kernel in your front controller, and that's index.php, and that's also a console, because, well, if it doesn't have a kernel, it does not work. So if you look at console here, it just, in addition to the extensible kernel, loads the app kernel. And that's kind of all it does. I find it a bit annoying that we have to copy those files. So maybe we could do something so that we can easily load custom kernel.
Actually, I talked to Ryan on the first day, and he kind of agrees with that.
Okay,
so developer experience-wise, this is not ideal at all.
Well, anytime you have to copy something that is that will potentially change at some point, well, you might potentially miss the change and have something that fails. And this is what we want to avoid at all costs. The second one is, I know I placed a web folder in the app. It was just a test, but it works. And it's the same for index.php. I had to copy it to load my app kernel instead of loading the EasyPublish kernel. But with this, it works. So I've been working with that for 1 to 2 years now. We still don't agree whether it's fully necessary or not. We also know it might conflict with the structural changes that are coming to Symfony, in Symfony 3. Actually, I think it doesn't. Have you heard about that, by the way? Symfony 3, new application structure?
Yeah. Well, there are quite interesting things in there, like the var folder.
It's a bit ironic, actually. In EasyPublish Legacy, we've been having this var folder for 50 years. A bit less, I'm going to say maybe 15 years, right? And Symfony didn't have that in Symfony. And I found it a bit weird when coming from Legacy. You have this app folder, that's good. And within there, you have this cache folder. And this cache folder will be written to by the server. That's a bit odd. It's mixing configuration with stuff you might want to customize with a folder where a lot of things are going to be written. And while we kind of were a bit proud of what was done before by Easy Systems, when we saw that, well, they were moving to a var folder, and within this var folder at the root, you have a log folder and a cache folder. Well, var log and var cache, I don't know for you, but that's EasyPublish for me. So Symfony is getting closer to what Legacy was, and I find that very ironic, even though, frankly, I think it's the right move. Just for information, because we will sooner or later move to it, it also moves binary files like console to a bin folder located at the root. And I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yes. The only problem with this move from the console file is that they then consider the console as a complete application or complete project wide. So
how do you manage your custom kernel then?
Well, this was kind of the discussions with Symfony 3. Not a lot of people are using multi-application projects. Well, I find it wrong, but that's my opinion. So maybe, well, we are not there for Symfony 3, so there are probably room for improvement for that, like using environment variables or even default options to say, okay, I want to use this app folder and load the kernel there. I mean, the console is clever enough for that.
I think it's clever. So I was going to say something. So in any case, this null structure can be tested with Symfony 2. At some point when you were, I think it was creating a project, or at some point one of the wizards in the console was asking which structure you want to use.
Yes, if you're using Symfony 2.5.
It used to do it because it doesn't do it anymore.
No, that has been deactivated. You need to set an environment variable for that.
Exactly. So you can test it, and I think we should because well, I guess we'll be affected a bit, but it should still be compatible with this. And originally, actually, I even had something like 4 different applications. I had app/dev, app/something else, app/ maybe content staging when I was testing staging. So multi-app was working. Yeah, I like to live dangerously. So multi-app was working. I don't know what people find wrong with multiple applications, but that's kind of almost theological.
Yeah, not all people do multi-site projects, which is actually one of the core features of Easy Publish. So,
in case there is one big issue with multiple projects, it's still one composer.json.
Yeah.
And so you have to aggregate your requirements there. So in any case, I did publish about that, I think it was last year or even earlier. It can be tested, this structure. So if anybody have some time and wants to try it and give feedback and potentially send a pull request or whatever, I'd be happy to discuss it. Because I'm pretty sure I did miss something, but to be frank, I've been working with that for 2 years for everything I do. And it just works. So one important thing it does is in this extensible kernel, because as said, we want to have both the instance configuration, your own config YAML, but you also want the configuration from the Easy Publish folder. And it is what is done here. In this method, if PHP stops freezing, I look for configuration, local configuration, but I also look for the, I should have the easy kernel, yes. No. How do I do that again? I forgot.
Here, kernel root dir, this get root dir. If that's what you're...
Yeah, it was a bit wicked. So it will technically load config.yaml from the Easy Publish folder, and it will, on top of it, load your own config YAML. Meaning you should have both settings, and you should not have to care about what is inside Publish itself. So this works. So please test it if you want to. And I think that's it for the application part. So about structuring itself, to be frank, as I said, our big issue is that we don't do projects. We see how we should do things. As said, a site bundle is a controller. It's also templates, but there is nothing special here. One versioning, back to versioning. We kind of have to live with legacy for now. It's annoying, we will have to do so for a few more months and maybe even like a year or so, plus maintenance and so on. So maybe you wondered what you should do with your Easy Publish legacy files. Because you will version SRC, you will version the Easy Publish folder, maybe your app if you're doing this. But what do you do with Easy Publish legacy? And actually it's quite simple. And we saw it in the beer website. Because we had like all those files for a reason we imported thousands of beers and had images, which is why our repository was like 1.5 gigabytes once installed. I know Eddie didn't like it for us. Didn't like us for that. So what you can do, and it's actually fairly easy, I will show you on the beer website. And I was surprised that it was so easy. Is this summer beer? Right?
This is summer beer.
As you can see here, we have an EasyPublish legacy folder, but well, we did not version EasyPublish legacy because it's big. So we just versioned what we had to version. So that was only settings on the right. But we versioned everything here. We technically kind of don't have to. If you need one thing, well, you kind of need this for now, but we should be able to prevent it. It's enabling EasyJS core because the back office doesn't look very good without EasyJS core. It's a bit wide and a bit vertical. So you kind of need that, but the main thing is this. The check validity equals false. Because if you don't have that and you go to the back office, you will get the setup wizard. And that's not very convenient. But what will happen when you clone this and run composer install? It's actually quite simple. It will kind of move all of this to a different place, and it will, well, in any case, it will merge legacy with what is here. So anything you need to put inside legacy, be it custom extensions, custom settings, images, assets, or whatever, just version them, but don't version anything else. And the composer install via the custom script will merge legacy with this, meaning you don't have to version the whole thing. And you should be able to keep a repository that is a couple megabytes, everything included. So does that speak to all of you? Is it some, how did you manage legacy when it came to versioning with the settings and everything?
Who used to version everything?
Everything? That vendor?
var.
Yeah, var you kind of have to, and so you just relied on composer install merging the thing, right? Well, I didn't know that before a couple of days ago. Well, at least it's simple, you know what to expect. So that's one of the things, version just what you need in legacy, and run composer install, and they expect it to work. So that structure, to be frank, it was a bit quicker than expected. Now, honestly, since we don't know your problematics, and yeah, our consultants go to customers and see what's happening, but we don't get so much feedback because of clearly lack of time. So, in your cases, what were your biggest questions, or what did you want to know when it comes to structuring a project? Because we have ideas, but we don't know what you want. So, out of 40%, at least one person should have, yeah, I'm sure you were at some point a bit pissed by what you had to do. No? Everything worked fine? I'm sure you have experiences you can share.
Yeah, tons of experiences. But first of all, can you show me your structure with this app folder, your new project directory? Because you have your dispatcher there, the index PHP under web.
Yes.
We had a use case that we actually wanted to have implement our own dispatcher, because we wanted to extend Symfony's own request object with some further methods. Mm-hmm. But our head of development said that we shouldn't do this because it may change because of coming updates.
Well, that's where.
So my question was that what exactly do you do with this app/web folder? Do you point your
yes.
server to this as document root?
Yes, but it's just that having stuff inside SRC, having stuff inside app, having stuff inside the web, it kind of feels wrong. I don't like having things scattered all over the place. That's why I try to group everything there. I even tried to move the app folder to the side bundle. But for structural reasons, due to relative path and everything, it didn't work out so well. I think it's possible, but it's also kind of fine that it is here, because anybody with at least a bit of Symfony experience will expect an app folder at the root level. So if it's not there, let's say I didn't feel like questioning everything that was standardized by Symfony, because it's about having some humility. If it's there, it's for a reason.
That part is clear, but this web folder, which should be set to public, I mean, as it is in a normal easy publish installation, it's in the root folder, so even assets are intended. So I'm not sure if I just looked at the kernel files, if it has any setups.
It's not in the kernel, it's in composer.json actually. So if you look, I'm not sure it's locally modified for that.
But anyway, Symfony is designed to leave you completely free for this structure. The app folder can be technically anywhere.
I understand. Yeah. This I didn't know. The web directory. Yeah.
So see here in Extra, it's made for it. So what I just did by default, we had Symfony app dir publish, and in my composer.json, since it is versioned anyway and you can't live without it, I just changed it to app, and it could be, of course, anything else. And for web, I could have left it in web, but well, this publish was already there. So I didn't want to change the native file, so I just moved it to app. And it could be anywhere, and it will work in the same way. I'm not sure how the assets installer reacts. I'm not sure it uses this variable. But in any case, when installing assets, you can specify the web folder as the last argument, and it will write, be it ascetic or asset install, it will write there. So this works as well.
The last one is wrong, right? Or
Which one? Yes.
I guess so, yes. Should be maybe app config.
Yeah, but I think parameters.yml from EasyPublish is also loaded, but well, that's the thing. The developer who said we should not modify this file, I'm sorry to say he was wrong.
The index.php is coming with your distribution, so it's not something that you can easily change. So.
But it is something you should not hesitate to change.
Actually, the index.php, the one distributed, is doing basically the same than the app.php distributed by Symfony Standard. We just add some facilities with the environment variables that might be passed by the web server. So that you don't have to modify this file each time you want to go in prod or to activate the cache or something like that. So it's not that complicated. Of course, it's a bit longer. Maybe we could split it in a separate one so that all the environment variable checks are separately checked. But technically, there is really no big deal here. This has nothing to do with the old index.php we had.
No, no, it's a real from controller. But yes, the original one is meant to be modified. It's not something that is carved in stone. But we try, at least I try to follow one rule. It's a simple sentence. Simple things should be simple, complex things should be possible. So stuff you always have to do, like changing the environments, enabling or disabling debugging, cache, and so on. You should not have to customize index.php for this, because A, it's a bit complex for beginners, and in any case, it should not be necessary because you have to do it. So what we chose to do here, and that's, I think, perfectly documented, is use environment variables. So if you don't specify anything, I think it will go to prod, right?
No, if you don't specify anything, yes, it will go to prod, yes.
But you can customize caching, environment, debugging using only environment variables. And in my opinion, it's a perfectly good way to do it, because both in Apache and Nginx, you can declare environment variables. And even in your case, if you have a custom index.php that does extra things, don't expect developers to modify it, because, well, they will always have this file modified, and it will be annoying when using Git, because we'll have to stash it every time, do your changes, and stash, get conflicts, fix the conflicts. That's, it should not happen. So we think that this way is the right way to do it, and you can take inspiration from it, and we didn't invent anything there. If you check, for instance, well, if you check the doc we have for Nginx, we have, it's here, site available. It's, if you haven't used it, it's well documented. Come on. Here you can see that we document suggested default values, like which environment you should use, dev, if we should use the APC class loader, which we should not, right?
Oh, it's perfectly fine. Just use APCU if you're on PHP 5.5.
Have this prefix, we have the use debugging, we have use HTTP cache, and this will automatically be applied in your index.php. You just have to change it, restart your server, and your new settings are taken into account. But it does make sense that you customize index.php. But I didn't want to change the one we provide. And well, I don't know how we could make it simpler because we have to provide a suggested one. But yes, it should be customized by big projects, and any experienced Symfony developer will do it when he has to. So anything else because I think you're like one of the ones with the most experience with Easy Publish 5. But on a website with more than 50 locales and running in production and stuff, anybody here has more than 50 languages on Easy Publish 5? I didn't think so.
No, that was just this one use case where we kind of extending the request object because of these locales and with what exactly we have to do with them. Watch side we have to deal with RTL languages, but in a way that they are treated as Middle East languages, because Middle East countries cannot feature girls with bare shoulders and stuff, and even the cross, which is the actual sign of SWAT, cannot be displayed in any Middle East languages. So it actually makes sense to move this kind of logic into the request object instead of having a separate local service that deals with this kind of easy test with this test.
As you, with your use case, having to modify the request object, using your own, is one of the perfectly valid use case of having your own front controller or modifying the index.php. Yes. This is even documented on Symfony.com.
I know, and I did come up with a solution to our head of development, but he said that we should make sure that this will not change because it might change in upcoming distributions.
Yes, right. Of course, it comes with a bit of risk.
Yeah.
But to be frank, I'm not sure what we might change in there in the future that would be kind of mandatory.
Yes, as a last resort, I could simply create my own dispatcher and just point my server that please do not serve index.php, but serve my index.php, and then it's basically it. So
yeah, but if you need to modify something in it, it is what you should do. Yes, but I would actually use a custom web folder because it would be even easier to avoid conflicts. But yes, it works, and you are kind of supposed to do it. The same goes for the console, because it has kind of a request as well. It's a front controller, and it is also meant to be modified. But well, we kind of are maybe not a unique situation where we ship a Symfony application, but we have to make decisions. So in my opinion, if in the future we change index.php to fix or add something, well, we will document it. We'll say if you have your own, you should add this or remove this or change this, just like we do for configuration files. But in any case, our meta repository, the Publish community or the Publish platform, is kind of meant to be customized.
Yeah, basically the rule of thumb is that everything that's in Easy Publish kernel, you don't touch it. You may extend it, override it, thanks to dependency injection, but that's it. Otherwise it's a hack and you might be in trouble. But everything that's in Easy Publish community, well, is meant to be modified. Don't be afraid so.
One thing with this dual app folder is routing, because routing is a bit special. Where is the main routing file configured again? In which part of Symfony?
Easy Publish, well, or app config or Easy Publish config routing.yaml.
Because the thing is, we can't load the original one and load an extra one. Symfony kind of does not allow that.
And this is made on purpose.
It's in order to avoid that bundle you install will create a route that gives root access to anybody to your site. So it's a good reason to do so. But fact is that I had to copy routing YAML from Easy Publish to my own app folder, or well, I would be missing useful routes like well, the core routes, the legacy routes, but well, basically Zippublish wouldn't be working without it. So this one had to be copied, and well, there is no trade-off I could think of to make it better.
Actually, you can, if you have a look at routing depth, for instance, you can, you see where was it? I think there is a resource somewhere, or maybe it's the main one, the routing YAML which imports this one.
Yeah, but I was not able to load the one from a different folder for some reason. Maybe due to relative path and so on. It was not interpreting some of the variables, so I tried, trust me.
Okay.
But maybe I missed something obvious, which is why contributions are more than welcome.
It was just challenging you.
And I tried. So what we can do is, because I guess maybe what we went through regarding structure and configuration was maybe a bit quick, we can take our beer website from yesterday. I guess that half of you were not here for the basic workshop, right? Because we were at 20 and we are like 40 now. So we have this beer website designed by a colleague. We have it
Sylvain here.
Here. This is what we worked on yesterday. Well, unfortunately, we did not drink beer during the workshop. We should have. So we created this. It's a nice website. We will most likely write a tutorial based on it because we think it's more suited than the demo bundle for learning. It's basically a site that has beers which we imported from an open API, brewydb.com. So it has beers, beer styles, beer categories, beer glasses, like which glass you're supposed to drink beer in. But we designed it.
Battery.
This thing is eating batteries. So, but we organized it like any Zippublish project. So we have the Zippublish folder, and we have everything in there. So we have this huge Zippublish.yaml with every template rule, with the site access configuration and everything. So let's say we want to reorganize it a bit and move some configuration around. So what I showed earlier as what should be here is quite minimal. So this is actually already right. We have this doctrine configuration. Here, this belongs here. This also belongs here because image magic being enabled or not depends on the environment. But then everything else can and I think should be moved away because what an Zippublish site without a repository, it's not going to work. A site without template rules, it's not going to work. Same for image aliases. They are business rules attached to the site. So what we can do here is move all of those to the bundle. And well, we try to do it, right? Yeah. Only have one hand.
Okay. Then I will talk during while he's working. So yeah, I guess you're just gonna use import or prepend? No, prepend extension interface. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't group settings in dedicated files, you may have a huge EasyPublish YAML, and that can be pain in the ass to maintain. So
works.
You see, you know, I told you you had you needed to rare-tie.
It was forbidden.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because I wear ties like every day. So, can you hear me or?
No. No.
That's not gonna work. Can try like this. No?
No, it's way too far.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
First. So, I cut most of the configuration from the main file. And I'm gonna go to source folder, systems, give me this one.
Okay. So, by the way, for those who were not here, this is available on GitHub. I think I showed it earlier. Did I? That's the demo bundle. Yes, I think it's here. So here you will find one interesting thing which we did not cover at all in the workshop. We have an import bundle there. And this bundle is something we use to take those 4 types of data from the API and create content based on it. So we made it available because we know that import is important, sorry about that, for many people. So inside the system here you have the side bundle which we worked on, and you have the import bundle. So it's based on the data import library by who already?
What?
That data import library.
David Debord.
Yes, so it's ddebor/data import on GitHub.
Yeah.
And it works really fine. It's really a proof of concept. We will most likely build something based on it. We're not sure what yet, but basically it reads data from one side, from sources, and it writes data on the other side. So it can read from DBOL and write to Excel, or read from CSV and write to Easy Publish, thanks to a writer. So all we have here is a writer that uses the public API to create content. And we use that to import like 5,000 objects. It has a very nice interface. It has a progress bar. It can be used in a CLI context or web context. So feel free to check it out. It can be the starting point for something useful. So parenthesis closed. So we have the site bundle, and currently in resources config, well, we don't have much. Services YAML is empty because we didn't have any custom service for the tutorial, and routing YAML is just the one generated by default, and it's not even imported.
It's just I forgot to delete this one.
So what we can do here can be very simply and easy. Publish.yaml file. The name can be anything you want, but since we are going to import its publish settings, I will name it the publish. So that's one thing. But, so it looks good. So we have repositories configuration. Should I unindent it? Yes.
I think we have other things than easy publish, like the slash configuration and stuff. Yeah, easy publish things.
Oh, that's a different one, yes, true. But what is
So you should remove it and taking it back to
Yeah.
easy publish.
Types of spaces? So that's one. We have those settings. Well, one thing that bothers me with the default files, I think it was like this here. I mean, image variations, it's, in my opinion, it's way too big to be in this file. It gets in the way. So usually what we want to do is have something equivalent to the image ini we had. So we can just take all of this, the whole block, and put it, was it too large? A bit too large. Yeah, a bit.
It just pastes all the image variations. That's
So this should do. We have a clean image variations.yaml, and actually we should even go a bit further. So we can remove them from here. They don't belong here anymore. Is that okay? Yes, fine. So that's one. That's also, by the way, why you should really group site accesses, like at least front-end group, so that everything that is common to those, every site access can be declared only once. So that's images. And then template rules. So as said before, in terms of conventions, I would also take this out, but I have the header in addition. Copy that and create a template rules.yml. Well, the name can be anything, but well, unless you disagree, I think it's fine that we establish conventions based on the easy publish domain. Image variations and template rules belong to easy publish. And I wish they were loaded by default if they exist. So we have our three files. Let's say easypublish.yml is kind of the generic file. I can remove all of it. And everything else, well, that's okay. Everything that's here is, I think, fine. In EasyDemo site, the one I published, if you go there, you will also see that I have a doctrine YAML, because, well, you cannot name the database configuration. If doctrine is not configured, the site won't work. So we would also have a doctrine YAML, and the repository's name, well, it can be hard-coded. So beer repository is fine. It expects a beer connection, and you configure it with parameters YAML. I won't do it now because we are almost done, but I think it should be done as well. And we almost have nothing custom in the EasyPublish folder anymore, only the things we want to override. So all we have to do now is load these files. So it's in dependency injection site extension. By default, it should not implement the prevent thing, so we just have to add it. That's useful. Okay, prepend extension interface, and we need to implement the prepend method. And that's where we can load our configuration. That's the site, I have it there, so source bundle.
This is also, you will also find code snippets on doc.easy.no. There is a cookbook recipe for this.
Of course there is. So we have created 3 files. We just in the same block, it's very repetitive. So we have easy publish YAML. Be careful with this one, it needs to be, it needs to match what would have been in the file. So we have removed the first level is publish because we specify which extension we configure within the PHP block. That's the only difference.
Don't forget to import file resources and YAML.
Okay, that's easy publish YAML. We need images and we need template rules. So template rules.yml and
Image variations.
Image variations.yml. And that should be pretty much it. I don't think we are missing anything.
No, but you will get an exception anyway.
Because?
Because it's always like that.
Oh.
Let's see.
Dumping the container again. Remember this XKCD comic about compiling. Hey, what are you doing? Compiling! Okay, that's right. Go ahead.
And well, my publish is in a VM, so it's much slower than it was on Jerome's powerful Mac.
Don't start scrolling.
I'm not. Well, if it hasn't crashed yet, it's likely that it will work.
It's
I think it has a hangover as well. So, see it work directly, we moved everything. I think you should all work like this, and in my opinion we will also modify how the demo bundle is shipped to actually demonstrate this correctly. But I think I'm done. Any last question before we finish? You are a question man today and yesterday and the day before.
Just you said if I wanted to share with regards to structuring the user website, and one thing I also missed today is the fact that today and yesterday we have been dealing with one bundle itself, but this is not a usual use case. So people will have tons of functionalities. So what? First of all, what we as beginner Symfony developers must grasp is that what is actually a bundle. So at the beginning of time, we tend to create bundles for each and every functionality. So basically, we had each and every page, and we created bundles for each of them. But now as we are refactoring it, as we started understanding what really a bundle is create controllers instead of new bundles. So try to tie your functionalities into bundles and then create controllers instead of new bundles. For us, what was basically the idea is that, let's say you have a customer service main navigation item, which features a contact form, which features FAQ, which features manuals in our case, and then instead of creating bundles for FAQ and create a separate bundle for contact, you create one bundle and then create the controllers for it. And then also we had tons of standalone pages, like one-page applications, and for that we created a bundle called Pages bundle, and then all the resources under that were created separate directory structure and also separate controllers. So you can separate your concerns, and you will not have tons of bundles which have to be registered in the kernel and stuff. And this also allows another developer or just a front-end developer to simply extend this bundle instead of asking a core developer to please register a new bundle, please register a new routing and new something. You can simply have one bundle and more controllers. So that was a hard lesson we had to learn, because we ended up with, I don't know, 55 different bundles, and then now we are down to maybe 10 or 12.
We talked yesterday a bit about inheriting, bundle inheritance, and you can,
thanks to this feature, even if it has quite a few limitations, you can then override almost anything from an existing bundle, like controllers. You can even override an existing controller. Like this is the case for the false user bundle, you need to do that. Or any template, any service, any whatever. So yeah, it's a very nice developer feature you might want to look at.
Actually, it's one thing I completely overlooked when writing my slides, and have to admit that yesterday was a bit exhausting. In terms of bundle, the side bundle is, as we said, mostly controllers, templates, and configuration. It should not contain anything else, in my opinion, because of reusability. But it can contain more stuff. Yeah, and services, but even services, unless they're services you will only use for this site, they can most likely be reused for different things. All you need to do, well, you kind of need to do what we are supposed to do for the last 20 years with object programming. That's single responsibility. Avoid huge bundles, go for small bundles dedicated to one purpose that are meant to be extended and used. And over time, well, it won't be easy to begin with, but over time, you will end up with a library of bundles which you can just add to your composer.json, even if it's private, and install, and you can start your website by, okay, which features do I need? And how do I make them work together? and maybe you can have like, with dependency injection, you can have a service that expects another one, but you can have 3 versions of this service depending on which bundle you use, and make it all work together with injection. So if you focus on reusability and separations of concerns with Symfony, you will get much more efficient. It was kind of what we tried to do with the extensions in the published legacy. I tried to build reusable extensions. I tried to publish them whenever I had a chance, so that others could maintain it for me, or so that it could benefit others. But it's the same thing. Don't do the same thing over and over again, and do reliable stuff properly identified and highly properly tested, which is something we can finally do now, and you will be much more efficient, and even more efficient as time passes. For instance, try to identify which twig filters you use on a regular basis. Maybe they're specific to you, but you can reuse them in your projects, and maybe actually they're not that specific, and you can publish them online and increase your visibility and get more money because you published open source stuff. Maybe it's also something you can publish to us because you think it belongs to Easy Publish. Maybe it's a third-party bundle we could integrate in our composer JSON, be it in the community release or enterprise. There are plenty of ways, but reusability of bundles and inter-bundles communication is key, I think, in these aspects. And start small. Start with a side bundle. If you have an idea for another bundle or feature, well, put it in the side bundle. When it starts to make sense and a big picture is starting to emerge, well, just create another bundle still in source. And when it makes more sense and you need it in a different place, create a true bundle in its own repository in a different place and make it a dependency. And go agile this way, and you will end up with lots of features and a big library. I think that's it.
Thank you.